Hello everyone. Today I'd just like to talk a little bit about this recent clear of DoDonPachi DFK in the normal arcade 1.5 version using strong style and the type B shot type. Before I start, I'd just like to give some context to frame this discussion in case I'm taken out of turn. I got this clear very unexpectedly because I don't have too much experience with this game. I only have some topical knowledge about how the hyper system works and how strong style is really kind of thought of as being the, I guess, the easiest mode to clear the game with, just because it gives you an auto bomb and a really strong shot type. And so I hadn't really been playing this game for very long. I kind of just dabble in it occasionally whenever I feel like I want something new. And so, in that sense, when I talk about what I'm doing in this route and how perhaps there might be some strategies for clearing this version of the game, I'll be talking with that context in mind, where I don't really have much general knowledge or experience, but through applying some pretty simple strategies, I was able to clear the game on 1 credit. So here's just stage 1. I think the main things that I want to emphasize while this stage is playing, because there's not too much going on, is that strong style gives you an auto bomb, which goes off and only depletes 1 bomb stock every time you get hit. And furthermore, as you die and get more extends throughout this game, what I found that really surprised me was that you start each life with a greater number of bombs that you had on the previous life, and it's all full. So essentially you can get hit many times throughout the course of the run and essentially make many mistakes by getting hit by things that you might have not memorized or are unfamiliar with, and still make it pretty far. And so I guess that's kind of why people say that this is a relatively manageable first cave game to clear, at least using these settings, because you can take maybe 10 times as many hits, maybe a little bit less than that, as a more traditional style game where you only have 2 starting lives and then 3 extends that you get throughout the course of the game. So in this game, however, you get however many hits on your character as a number of bombs you have. The other thing that I want to mention now that stage 1 is wrapping up is that there's a hyper system in this game that allows you to cancel bullets by shooting them whenever you're in the hyper mode. And so with those 2 kind of general points, you can get pretty far in this game by just deciding to hyper whenever you get into trouble, and then just taking hits and allowing the auto bomb to ensure that you don't die. You'll see in stage 2 that when I get into sticky situations, I use either a bomb, as you see there, or the hyper whenever I have it available. I believe the bar to notice that you have hyper should be on the top left there, and you also get an audio cue for whenever your hyper is ready. There, I activate it. You can see here that it's canceling all the bullets that this mid-boss is firing, which is kind of ridiculous, at least visually speaking. And so, yeah, I think it lasts for quite a while, at least from what I could tell from my very minor experience with the games, which seems very nice for, I guess, just getting through difficult sections. Of course, there is something called hyper rank in this game, which means that the more you hyper throughout a stage, the more difficult the game gets, which kind of is the game's way of saying, hey, you're taking advantage of this mechanic a bit too much. With a higher hyper rank, also, it takes more bullets to cancel the enemy bullets, I believe. And if you get to a high enough hyper rank, then these things called danger lasers also appear throughout the map, which just continually make things more difficult for you. Here you see I activate the hyper again. Additional thing about this game that's kind of unusual, or something that I haven't encountered before, is that there's like a laser fencing type of mechanic where enemies will shoot lasers at you, and the only way that you can kind of stop these giant walls is to use your own laser. And so you develop this aura around you that allows you, or that protects you from the laser if it's shooting you head on, or if you're using your own laser to kind of interrupt the enemy laser's flow. So that becomes important in the later stages. This is the stage 2 boss. It's not really, or I don't really have too much to say about it, because I'm just relying on the same strategies where whenever I feel like I can't dodge something, I use a hyper, and otherwise I just try to dodge it relying on my auto bombs. One thing to note that might be, somewhat help someone trying to clear this version of the game using the strong style is that you get more hyper, or you build up the hyper when you point blank enemies, and I think bosses as well. So if you watch a replay, a lot of people, especially if they're playing for score, like to charge up their hypers by hypering in while sitting on top of a boss and point blanking it. You can see the hyper meter charge up really fast, and it builds almost instantaneously at that point, and then they have another one ready. Of course, you can't really abuse this too much because of the hyper rank mechanic, but it is a strategy that helps make that resource available to you again very quickly. So you can see here that I've taken 2 hits already, and in another game that might mean that I'm on my last life. But using strong style with the auto bomb, I still have my 2 lives, and I have 1 bomb left, so I can take another hit. And so, yeah, you can see here that the laser fencing mechanic sort of comes into play. It's a little bit hard to see because the hyper is covering the entire screen, but once I leave the hyper mode, which naturally expires over time, you can see the hyper or the lasers come a bit more into play. And so I think I don't really have any specific strategies for this because, as I said, I'm not too experienced with this game. But how I approached it, and what was sufficient for getting the clear, I suppose, is that whenever lasers were going to be swept over me, or I was in the direct line of the laser, then I would laser back and then just try to dodge all of the remaining bullets that, aren't the laser. I think that's kind of how the game first expects you to learn how to deal with those situations, and there'll be some enemies that kind of teach you this as you go throughout the game. So this is stage 3, as I mentioned before. I believe there is an extend that you get from the mid-boss in this game, or in this stage, that I'll point out later. I don't think we're quite there yet. You can see here I'm just abusing the hyper some more, not just sitting in the middle, not really trying to dodge anything, and just letting its raw power take out that mid-boss or that large enemy. I think, I'll also take this opportunity to say that this game, despite this clear coming very suddenly and without too much practice, I think this game is just very mechanically dense, and there's a lot of stuff going on, which makes it kind of overwhelming to watch. And to be honest with you, a lot of my approach to this game just came from just being overwhelmed by all the visual effects on the screen. It can get really busy. And so that's why I think some people may feel a bit, intimidated by starting this game or giving it a shot, even though it's typically recommended by more veteran players as the easiest clear. There's the 1-up item in that large enemy that you can get to give yourself another extend. And what I say to what I would offer as far as encouragement to newer players is just something like, this replay is kind of evidence of the fact that you don't really need to understand these mechanics very deeply in order to still do well, and I guess in the context of being able to clear this mode on 1 credit using a very strong, gameplay system that is provided to you. And I believe that it's also available in arcades, so if you want to use that as your metric for saying, I really want to be able to play for a long time on an arcade machine in Japan that has DDP DFK, I would be able to clear this game using the settings provided to me by the arcade operator, at least as far as I'm aware. So in that sense, you should feel encouraged to, or I hope that would encourage you to give this game a try, regardless of the fact that it just looks really busy on the screen. The main tactics, again, that I applied are simply that I laser every time a laser seems like it's gonna collide with me. I hyper whenever I feel like I'm not confident in dodging. Oh, sorry, give me 1 second here. This pattern gets really nasty because it speeds up at the end, and it takes me by surprise there. It's that, yeah, I was not aware that was gonna happen, so it was it felt a little cheap to me. But anyway, and the third strategy is just that, there really isn't a third strategy. It's really just feeling comfortable with the fact that you can take many hits, throughout the game, and you're really just taking things in stride, trying to react to the many challenges coming your way. Especially in Stage 5, which has the laser wheels of death that we'll get to, and I'll point out, that have become kind of infamous when talking about this game. So, yeah, I guess just going back to the progress here, I believe I'm on Stage 4 now. I have 2 extends left, and you can see here that I'm on my last autobomb that was just expended there. I believe that if you use a bomb, actually, rather than it detonating as an autobomb, it actually does more damage or has like a greater impact, which I think then rewards using them a bit preemptively and being able to recognize that you're in a good deal of trouble. But for the most part, I kind of used hypers in its place. I don't think they're bound to the same button in this game. I could be wrong, so please correct me if I'm misspeaking. But yeah, so it really, I really can't say too much more regarding the strategy, because that's all I'm applying right now, and that's really my mindset for approaching this game at the time. Because as I mentioned, I wasn't trying to seriously get this 1 credit clear. It was more just trying to understand and get more familiar with the game. And it just so happens that I was able to have enough resources that I could essentially I didn't take enough hits such that I was killed before the last boss that I encountered, which will be at the end of Stage 5. So you can see here I died again, so I have 1 life now, but I now have 5 bombs, which means I can take 5 hits before I will be on my last life. There's a hit there, but it's still okay. I'm just taking things in stride. I get hit again. There are these large laser wheels. These enemies kind of, these are the ones that I mentioned earlier, which kind of teach you how to use your laser, because they shoot these giant laser wheels, and at the same time, these rotating patterns of bullets. I believe they'll come up again soon. And so the idea is then that you'd have to be lasering, I think it's coming up right here. You'd be lasering while holding the laser and then dodging those bullets until you kill it, and then it gives you a full screen clear. And they come up at various points throughout Stage 4. Yeah, and I think, since we have a second, as far as my general thoughts on DFK go, I'm not too familiar with the DoDonPachi games. I played this one because it was pretty conveniently available on Steam, and I think it's kind of a gateway to a lot of newer players who see that Cave is a really legendary developer. They want to understand more about what they do, and they have maybe like 3 Steam ports available, this being one of them. And so, yeah, I mean, in general, I think that it's definitely interesting how this game operates, but I'll just have to go back to what I was saying before, which is that it's very dense as far as what's happening, and it's very hard to process visually. So the entire time I was playing this, I was just kind of, I don't know, in like a state of suspense where I just never knew like what exactly was going on. I make some kind of crazy dodges that were definitely unintentional throughout the course of this game, just because of just because I wasn't really understanding what was happening. For example, the hyper, or using your hyper in order to cancel bullets, I was definitely not very familiar with this mechanic, so there were times where my hypers wouldn't cancel bullets as much, and I was like, well, what's the reason for this? Is it because the hyper rank is really high? Is it like, am I going to get hit by these things before I'm able to cancel them? And just little mechanics like that, which add a lot of uncertainty and just kind of, I don't know, a sense of just being lost. And so in that sense, I think that the game has a lot to offer, and I've only scratched the surface of what you can actually do. That was just the Stage 4 boss. But yeah, I think that that's kind of a hurdle for me personally, and something that I'm not the biggest fan of. I think the other thing that I have some hesitancy about this game is that all the bosses, I'm not quite a fan of the aesthetic, the kind of schoolgirl anime-ish vibe that they give off. I'm not sure, it's not my favorite aesthetic as far as some of Cave's games are concerned. So yeah, that's kind of just my 2 main gripes, but besides that, it's still it offers so much content as far as all the modes go, and the core experience is very solid. So in that sense, I still think it's good that this game is available on Steam and that people can enjoy it as one of the main offerings that I guess are the most accessible. Going back to, I guess, the run, this is now stage 5, which is pretty long. You can see here that I have 2 extends and 1 auto bomb left, so I'm kind of just... Oh, and the auto bomb dies over there, but I'm kind of just, at this point, trying to see how far I can go. Take the death there, I have 1 extend left, and now you can see I have 6 bombs. So, okay, I believe how this works then is that you gain an additional bomb, or you gain +1 to your bomb capacity every time you die, and your bombs are always full whenever you start a new life. So that gives you a copious amount of time taking a hit, as you can see. So I'm really just reacting to a lot of these patterns. I don't have anything memorized because of my lack of experience in the game. But as I said before, just hypering whenever you have a chance, or whenever you feel like you need to, at least paid off for me in this run. And it kind of just goes to show how crazy the strong style in this game is. I believe it's called strong style. I've forgotten. Where you have the auto bomb and the strong shot, essentially. Because, yeah, I mean, I was kind of... sorry, one thing to note here. These are the laser wheels of death. You can see that I'm taking hits from colliding with them. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty infamous part. I was vaguely familiar with the fact that I would be contending with this in stage 5, but really it's kind of hard to truly fathom how to deal with this. You can see here that I collided again with the wheel at the very bottom, because they have these giant hitboxes, right, and they have these lasers in which force you to use your own laser, and yeah, it's just a mess. Or you can see how I don't deal with it very effectively at all. So you'll see me take lots of hits throughout this portion of stage 5. They always creep in and out of the screen in this section. It's really kind of a high suspense portion of the game for sure. They're coming on the bottom, left again. I take another auto bomb, colliding into it again. There, I'm just using up all of my lives or all my bombs at this point. And again. So how many hits did I take there? 5? But yeah, I mean, we're still... apparently I was still on track at this point, despite the fact that I didn't really know how to handle that section at all. So it kind of just shows the amount of flexibility that you have with being able to finish this game, at least in this difficulty mode. Laser wheels make their return. I'm probably going to run into them again on the bottom right there. Oh, but because I hyper... okay, there. So I hypered, but because my bullets were shooting forward and the lasers were coming from behind me, I got hit by them anyway. So more unfamiliarity there. I really don't know how to deal with this section at all. Taking another bomb. And I guess another mid-boss. So I'm on my last extend, but I still have, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 auto bombs left. So, I honestly at this point I wasn't sure if there were 5 or 6 stages in the game. So, just as I said, taking things in stride, applying those very basic strategies that I was aware of at the time. Yeah, the music in this game is also really good. I think that goes for DDP in general, but DFK has a really awesome soundtrack, especially in stage 5. And it, I think I spoke a lot about how the things I didn't like about, I guess, my initial impressions with this game, but definitely the quality of the sprites and the soundtrack, and despite it looking busy, how awesome the visuals look is something that I also wanted to make sure I pointed out. It's really part of the appeal of playing these types of games is just how awesome they look from a spectator standpoint. Let's see, so I think this is the lead up to the final boss. There might be another just small laser section before this. I have 3 auto bombs left, and I'm trying to build up that hyper so that I have a pseudo get out of jail free card later in the stage. Phased through a couple of walls there. I don't know how that worked, but I just got really lucky. Yeah, whenever there's a lot of lasers being shot at me and a bunch of bullets, sometimes I don't take a hit, despite the fact that I feel like I probably should have, given that I wasn't really tracking everything on screen. I think that the hitbox in this game is actually quite small, so that might be why it allows for some miracle dodges, such as what's happening in this section. But yeah, this is the final laser section, going through to the final boss. One thing that I'm kind of unsure of also is that there are laser enemies, some of which I believe you can kill, and others which I don't think are possible to kill. It was something that wasn't readily apparent when I was playing, during playing the run. So yeah, I don't know, like that might be something that I have to look into later if I start playing the game seriously, but the knowledge was not needed for getting the clear, so yeah, there's that, I suppose. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to think of things to say, because I don't really, as I said, I'm really inexperienced with this game, so, it's hard for me to give any general advice besides that. So here's the final boss. My goal for this, I wasn't sure if it was the final boss, but it apparently was that, I would just try to dodge every pattern that didn't involve lasers, because I had a number of auto bombs left, and everything that required lasers, I would just try to hyper. So this doesn't actually have lasers, but, it just looks really visually confusing, and I wasn't sure if those capsules had hitboxes, so I decided to hyper. Those danger lasers that you see on the top right there are because I hypered so many times already throughout the stage that my hyper is less effective. So when I saw those, I was like, okay, well, it seems like that might not be an option for me for the rest of the boss fight. But I still can take 3 more hits. So yeah, it was definitely down to the wire here, I think. More capsules that I will collide with again, probably. Yeah, there we go. There's another auto bomb off, and we're on the second to last phase, I believe. I don't know what I got hit by there. Maybe it was something that I just couldn't track with my eyes. I wasn't quite sure. But yeah, so we're almost in the last phase. I have 1 auto bomb left. I hyper again, which seems to be canceling the bullets well enough for it to end that phase. And now we're in the final phase. Yeah, and you can see here that exiting the hyper mode also allows or gives you a screen clear. And yeah, thankfully I was able to kill it before those large fireballs rained down on me, because I probably wouldn't have been ready to dodge those. So yeah, I mean, I think that was the final stage in the game, so it's rather short. I think has a 20-minute runtime. You can see I used every auto bomb that I had available to me. Probably got hit over 10 times throughout the course of the run, but I suppose that that's okay for this mode and for this shot type and this playstyle. So it's definitely not a 2-all, right? It's definitely, I wasn't able to fill any of the loop requirements. I actually don't know what those are, but yeah, it was enough to be able to say that I was able to 1cc 1.5 in DFK. Yeah, so with that being said, some closing thoughts. It definitely is a game where I can see why it has a reputation for allowing a lot of flexibility in getting your first arcade clear, and also as far as being quote-unquote accessible for newer players. I think that's definitely true in the sense that you can get by without knowing a lot of the mechanics, and you can get pretty far in the respective stages because you can get hit so many times. But I have to say that there is a lot of stuff going on in the game and a lot of visual confusion that kind of it's definitely hard to make sense of unless you were to take a deep dive and devote more attention to the game than a passing observer or a casual enjoyer might be willing to invest. So in that sense, I don't know. Like, I think that if your goal is to just get a Cave 1cc, this is the game to do it. But in general, if you want to have fun and have an experience in just playing and getting into a shmup, this could be an option. But I think others are also better gateways in that sense that might give you more motivation. So in that sense, sorry for the rambling. I mean, as you can tell, I don't have too much experience with this game, but regardless, appreciate you for watching. Have a great day.